Yo! Video games.
What up, dudes, and welcome back to the Yo Video Games podcast. I'm Matt.
And I'm Andrew.
And once again, thank you to all generous patrons who kept us going for over 450 episodes.
Yeah, if you're interested in becoming a patron at any level, please check out patreon.com/YoVideogames podcast. Due to the week is God Night. Thank you, God Night.
Thank you, God Night.
I think God Night's been with us since the beginning, or at least for like 5 years. I know he's been due to the week once or twice before. Oh, Mary got back to us from last episode.
Yeah.
Short for Meredith.
Meredith, yeah.
I don't know what it says about us that we immediately assumed it was a Lord of the Rings reference rather than the totally
dorks.
normal name.
We thought we are dorks. That's what it is.
But yeah, not in a million years would I have guessed Meredith the totally normal and wonderful name. I also realized I forgot to, for the color correcting, I forgot to do my little white balance card, so everybody gets to be in on that little white balance card. There you go. For everyone there. We're all in on it together. The TGA's announced all their nominees, and every year we get into this similar debate where we talk about, is the TGA, is it a good award show? I say no.
No, not really.
But it is a very good snapshot of it's a good representation of where the industry's going, because it is a really good representation of sales and popularity.
Right. I mean, it is a popular cause. Here's the thing, is that because people say the words don't matter. I see that thrown around a lot. And to you, they don't matter, though here you are always saying they don't matter, always commenting on it. But here's the thing. They do help game sales. Like, there was probably a positive impact on, say, Alan Wake 2, which is, struggling to get mainstream appeal. But because it was so heavily promoted at the Game Awards, it probably helped that game in many ways. It didn't win Game of the Year, but I mean, it definitely probably had a good helping hand for something like, say, Alan Wake 2.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you on games like Alan Wake 2. Yeah, totally. I think for the most, or like the majority of games that get into the TGAs that are nominated, they've already sold very well to get there.
And that's kind of like the other kind of like bummer part of it is that,
is it a huge boost? Maybe not, but sometimes, yeah, I guess for like Alan Wake.
Yeah, I mean, for It Takes Two, it was huge,
right?
So it won Game of the Year somehow. Not to discredit it, I'm just like, I can't believe they voted for a platformer.
And I'm not going to get mad at that.
But it sold very well because of that. So that is a very positive impact the game had. You could even argue the game's director had more of a positive influence on his own game than the Game Awards itself, just by going on and screaming obscenities. So,
I mean, yeah, that sort of brings me to one of the things that I don't know if, I'm sure we've said this every year, but like, it's like the game that I would love to see win is almost definitely not going to be the game of the year, because for various reasons. But like, for like this year, Astrobot is in contention for game of the year.
yeah.
And I would sort of love it for Astrobot to win. But is it a bigger, more ambitious, better, more popular game than Final Fantasy VII Rebirth? Not a fucking chance. Like, there's just no way. So there's like, I don't know that I would even vote for Astrobot over Rebirth.
I mean, I really do. We both really liked Astrobot, but
really enjoyed it.
There's a real elephant in the room, and I'm just gonna, I think we should just tackle it head on. And that is about, I think, less than a week ago, there was an update on their website, which on their FAQ, that clarified that remasters, remakes, and DLC are all eligible for Game of the Year, provided they provide a big enough standalone enough whatever experience. This, everyone, and honestly, it was done. It makes sense why the timing was the way it was. Is they wanted it to get ahead of the announcements where Shadow of the Erdtree is up for Game of the Year and many other awards, and it is a DLC game. You need the original. You can't just play the game on its own.
Right.
A lot of people are really upset about this. I think standalone, I think you remove yourself from the Game Awards itself. Is a DLC worthy of Game of the Year? I think sure, but let's take that away, okay? I think on its own, Sure, it's fine. Here's the problem. That's not been the case. That has not been the case, and it looks terrible on their part to sort of like sneak this in a week ahead of the announcements or less than a week ahead of the announcements. And then here it is, like our DLC game of the year, and it's a FromSoft game, which he's always been accused, and he is. I mean, honestly, he does dick ride FromSoft because he knows FromSoft has a huge fan base, but like it just looks like what it is. Like you're kind of bending your rules. You're kind of
Yeah.
stretching stuff because it's FromSoft.
The weird thing is I think there's a real solid argument that remakes should not be
Mhm.
included in Game of the Year. Now, I would say that if the remake, like remasters, absolutely definitely remakes, if they are different enough, if enough has been
Mhm.
added to them. But then how do you measure if enough has been added? This is where DLC has the same problem. How do you measure if the DLC is big enough to stand alone?
Right.
Like, is the DLC on its own, not including the main game, enough content to measure it against entire games in terms of quality and, again, ambition and size and stuff. If it's a I know the Shadow of the Erd Tree is not 2 hours, but like if it's a 2 hour DLC, should it be compared to full length games? I don't know. I
I
don't
mean,
think
and I think that's what the FAQ was trying to say, where it's like if the DLC campaign is like the length of a
full
average full
campaign.
game, then it should be. And again, I don't have a problem with this, but I think they definitely did themselves dirty. They painted themselves into this corner because you had last year, you had Cyberpunk, Phantom Liberty. I think I called it
Right.
Phantom Library before, but Phantom Liberty. Um, and it had like it was in like ongoing game or something, best ongoing games, which sounded like, okay, that's a stretch, but that definitely sounds like where DLC should be, best game expansion or whatever, because like No Man's Sky keeps getting nominated and stuff like that.
Right.
That makes sense. uh but it wasn't nominated for Game of the Year, and the thing is I don't know how much I can really go. I probably shouldn't go into any hyper details, but there's a real chance, say a year ago, that they may not have been aware that they could put that in, when because the thing is like Jeff himself does not personally pick the nominees.
No, he sets them out to, um,
Like
isn't it like journalists he takes from?
well, all the judges,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to get like into details I probably shouldn't be getting into, but it's like it's Jeff's not personally picking this stuff.
Right,
But
but I hold him responsible, so fuck Jeff.
here's the thing: it is also his show, and it is also a call he would be making ultimately, whether or not DLC should or shouldn't be eligible for gaming. This is something that would be discussed before public announcements of things would go out. So it seems like in the past you had games like Witcher, which had big DLC campaigns, didn't win Game of the Year or anything like that, and Cyberpunk, and I always argue Xenoblade, which to me was like, okay, well then Xenoblade just got robbed for its DLC campaigns because those are more standalone than most of these other standalones.
Right.
Um,
I I don't know. I'm always on the side of like cutting a little bit of, like, not specifically to Jeff himself, but in this case, like cutting him some slack because there's no rule book for this stuff. Like he's
no,
just
but
making
here's
them.
the thing: it's his show, it is his rule book, and
Right. Yeah.
and to have gone this long with these many really well regarded, really standalone. You've had DLC campaigns that actually are
Yeah.
sold on their own and can be played on their, and they're not in
Well,
contention.
that's what I'm getting at. Is like that's where tradition becomes its own part of the award ceremony. Like, M he should have respected it. I would argue the DLC should not be included as
Right,
possible
and if you want to say that,
ever.
great. Where is
Mhm.
the DLC category? Why? I mean, honestly, there's other things we could get into here, which is like, say, the action category, because there's action and there's action adventure, and action has two third person shooters, one first person shooter, Call of Duty, and two Souls likes in one genre. One genre, you Call of Duty and Warhammer and Helldivers,
Vastly different
Black
audiences.
Myth Wukong and Stellar Blade. And it's like, okay, this is way too like all over the place. Like you could easily have a first person shooter category,
But
or
not
a
enough
sh-
of
or
them
just
come
do
out every year, man. That
they
well, that
do, but they do,
no, no, no.
but
That
they
was
do.
the argument that used to be used for categories. You might not remember this,
Because I
but
mean,
this
like,
is
here's the thing: you have a strategy RPG for God's sake.
right in 2015. I want to say maybe because we talked about this before, where they talked about like sometimes the reason why these categories are set up this way is not enough of those games of that genre come out. That was the argument back then. Um, you know, I'm being ironic by bringing it up for shooters, which because shooters are, I don't know what the
Yeah,
number one most amount of games that come out is shooters.
plenty of shooters
Probably.
come out every
Yeah.
year. It's
So
ridiculous.
you could have your own best shooter category, but without shooters, how many games would be falling into action games?
Well, I mean, I think
3, 4?
no, you could easily fill out 5 on this one.
Okay.
Because I mean, because again, like I'm just thinking off the top of my head, because you already had Black Myth, you have Stellar Blade, you could have put Rise of the Ronin in there.
Hellblade
You,
could have been
you
in
could
there.
have put Hellblade in there. You could have put another Crab's Treasure in there. You could have put Prince of Persia in there or something like that. It might be
And
in some
an
other
action
category.
adventure, yeah, not action.
That might be an action adventure, but like there's plenty of other just general action games
Right.
because that's a very
No, I
I don't know.
agree with you.
I don't even know if the genre action should even exist, honestly, but I get it.
Well, yeah, there are some games that don't have any combat at all. And
Yeah,
so you're all like, are those action adventure or are they just adventure? Is there just an adventure or do all adventure games go into action adventure?
right.
It's
Yeah,
it's one of those things where like I give them slack because no one's going to be happy with any decision you make. I do agree that there are better decisions to be made here, but I also have to acknowledge that me and people like me will whine about basically whatever
I mean,
whatever
again,
decision you choose.
again, you can keep the action genre, but like it should not include first, third person, hack and slash. It shouldn't include all of that. There should not all FPS, especially, should not be in action. It just shouldn't.
Well, why are we not having categories specific to video games? Like why do we not we talk about games, we don't say, "Oh, it's an action adventure game." We usually say it's a hack and slash, it's a shooter, it's a
Mhm.
part of me is all like, "Oh, well this is also like trying to mainstream the awards to expand the industry," which is what the TGA is for, really. It's an advertising
Yeah.
venue to expand the industry to newer markets, right? Part of me is like, oh, it'd make more sense if you had a best shooter, best hack and slash, best adventure,
Well,
best,
it's
that
also
kind of
excuse me, but it's also kind of weird how was it Wukong and Stellar Blade are in action and they are Souls-like games with levels,
yeah.
but Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree is an RPG.
And something weird about Wukong is Wukong was directly trying to compete with Elden Ring. Like that's who the crown they were going for.
Yeah, I mean, well, initially they were
So
saying that, and then they kind of backed off on that as the years wore on, and then they said like, "Oh, we're trying to be our own thing," but
they were going, yeah, they were going for souls. Um, I think Wukong's also just an interesting thing because how much of the push for that was, and I'm not saying it's not a good game. I have personally not played it, but
I have.
I'm not trying to comment on it. It is interesting how much like nationalist propaganda online got pushed into making sure that Wukong was a 10 out of 10 best game ever, China
Right.
number one, like
Yeah,
like
there's definitely
literal
like
troll
that
farms.
aspect because like the
Yeah.
Metacritic of the game is actually like an 80, 81. There's actually several games that are higher, but here's the thing: if you look at his journalist panel, they are all over the world.
Yeah.
So I think the reason that Wukong is say on here has less to do with just pressure from gooners or pressure from any other thing. I think it's more just well in America and in say UK and parts of Europe, Journey to the West is like we maybe have like a cursory knowledge or like we've heard of it kind of thing,
Hmm.
but it's like it's Arthurian legend, in a huge chunk of the world.
Yeah.
So for them to get massively budgeted, big budget, big, project game based on that, or sort of like a semi sequel to that. It's like a big deal for a much for a big swath of the planet.
Yeah.
That this side is just kind of like, oh well, okay, cool, whatever, Monkey King, sure.
No, I mean, like, Chinese mythology is really damn cool. It is also, in a lot of ways, totally off our radar in Western. So, like, uh, my brother's degree is in Chinese, like a certain, there's like a 500-year period that my brother's history degree is in. And it's like China has thousands of years of history from before any of us were recording history type thing.
Hmm.
Their mythology is similarly vast and has that depth. I, I don't want to come off like I'm criticizing, the mythology. That's not what I'm doing. I also do think it is an achievement that this is their first true AAA,
Yeah,
game made by a Chinese developer for the Chinese, or for the worldwide market rather. I just think it's funny that because it was a worldwide product that would, like, actual bot farms were used to push this, like,
yeah.
Wukong number one type thing. I'm not commenting on the quality of the game at all. It looked cool.
It's
I have not played it.
It's okay. There are other. I mean, I'll be that asshole and just say like it's probably one of the best looking games on the market right now. Probably the best looking game on the market right now. There are better games that came out this year.
I've also
There
heard
are
that like
there
shit.
are other games that are more deserving of that of the spot it sits in. Then I mean, I would very much argue Infinite Wealth deserves the nomination for GOTY over that game.
Okay. I
I've
it's
Having played both, obviously haven't beaten only beaten I've beaten Infinite Wealth. I've not beaten Black Myth Wukong, but
So this gets into something that I said earlier, I touched on earlier, is the TGA is always a representation of where the industry is going. They very clearly, and have for years and years and years, they want more penetration into the Asian market, specifically
right,
China,
yeah,
but like Southeast Asia too. We've seen several attempts to get into like Southeast Asian
yeah,
mythology.
and to really clarify myself here too, I want you to know, I want everyone to know here that it's not that I'm against, say, the Chinese market or whatever, because
No,
I am
right?
going
Yeah,
to be ride or die for Phantom Blade Zero, which is being made in Beijing, and I've spoken at length with the game's director and other developers from that. And the combat in Phantom Blade Zero is phenomenal, and the combat in Black Myth is not even not is it's okay. It's not really even as good as Dark Souls, or Bloodborne. But Phantom Blade Zero already in its unfinished alpha state has phenomenal combat. And it does look good. It's got some polishing to go with because Unreal 5 is a weird janky engine. But I just want everyone to know here that when Phantom Blade Zero comes out, and if Phantom Blade Zero comes out as good as it already looks and plays, but better, I am going to, you will see me being ride or die for that game from China
well,
because it
yeah.
is it is it is exceptional, like so far, like from a gameplay perspective.
To be
It's
fair to
just
people defensive of Black Myth Wukong, there are plenty of assholes online that are just hating on it purely because it is from China.
right,
Um,
and I'm not that person. I'm saying it's a beautiful game. I'm just saying I am sick of I am exactly in the same mindset as the director of Phantom Blade Zero, which is I don't like Souls combat. Which Black Myth
yeah,
basically is. And he's like, I don't like Souls combat. I like Metal Gear Rising. I wanted more games like this. They're not being made, so I'm making it. So
I'm on board
that's
with it. Yeah, I like
that's where I am. Because for me, it's boiling down to, from a strictly gameplay perspective, eh, I'm very tepid, lukewarm on the gameplay of Black Myth. Yes, it's beautiful, and I think it's really cool that you have this big expensive look into Journey to the West, or sort of a sequel to Journey to the West. But at the same token, I'm just kind of out of time. I'm just like, how
right.
is the act? How good is the quality of the game and the gameplay? And eh,
I in hindsight too. I mean, when we're talking about game of the year, like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth almost definitely has this. And I was trying to think in hindsight, like how much did I really end up liking Final Fantasy VII Rebirth?
There's been some soul searching for some people on the game, and I think there has been a little bit of weird pushback. Um, and the thing is like, okay, it is absolutely my game of the year, but I do have some grievances with Rebirth, and both gameplay and, well, I mean, presentation, yes, but the pro kind of fix that, but also narratively, I because it's in narrative, and I would actually argue this should not be a narrative. This, like, if anything, the narrative is kind of a weak spot because of the weird Hail Mary they threw at the end of the game. But that's going into spoiler territory.
I'm not
Uh,
even it's not even real like I also agree that it is absolutely worthy of game of the year. I honestly, if I was voting, if I was one of the people voting, which I realize yes you can, but like yeah, I'd probably throw it behind it. Really the only drawback that I have after having time to sit with it is the open world sort of sucks. It's not
really not a fan of it, huh?
well, okay. The thing is I like open world games,
Hmm.
but like they're just like a lot of that open world is empty. Now, granted, the music and being able to ride a chocobo both being good and fun,
Hmm.
I think for while I was playing it, made up for that. It's when I went back to like finish up some other little things that I realized how much I didn't love the prospect of running all over the place in it.
Hmm.
And then also, you don't spend that much time in towns. Like you don't. uh, These are minimal. Like
I would say
nitpick.
on a nitpicking scale, I would say there's 5 zones in the game.
Yeah,
I think 2 of them are kind of not great. Is kind of my takeaway from it, which is I think Corel is not great. I get it; it's a
okay.
desert. It's what can you do? But it's not fun to explore, even with the buggy. Corel is the kind of beginning part's okay, and I don't mind that, but it's kind of small in comparison. And a lot of people hate Gungaga. I like Gungaga, me
I
Gungaga.
didn't really. Yeah,
But Nibelheim, I think Nibelheim and Corel are kind of a wash as far as like map design and location goes. Like they have their cool spots, but like otherwise, I don't really care about spending any time in them.
but the music in Corella is pretty cool.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I mean,
Uh,
that's one thing is like if you're gonna have an open world, if it's like it's the music helps a lot.
yeah.
It's again, I know I'm being nitpicky. Like I
I think another thing really that the open world they could have done differently or could do differently in 3. I think they need to I think they just need to give you a jump button and get rid of the contextual, like hold down R2 and Cloud will climb over stuff or step up high steps.
mm,
He won't do it unless you're holding down the R2 button. So
right.
you need he has all these contextual climb over things. And I'm like, give him a jump button. like like,
I get that, but I didn't mind the contextual
screw
stuff.
all this weird contextual stuff. It just makes traversing feel a little weird and awkward. And I'm like, just give him a jump button. Just give us a jump button.
In terms of like these nitpicks, would they take it out of contention for game of the year for me?
Oh no.
No.
And again, those aren't even my biggest issue with the game is the AI being idiotic.
Well, I mean,
Like
that's
it completely boggles my mind that the AI is as dumb as it is, and there's no actual prompts. There's no like AI settings for your party. You have like what you end up doing is you use one of 2 things, which is one, you give them auto equip materia or auto
mhm,
materia. So you have to like waste 1 or 2 materia slots to get them to constantly like, hey, I want you to heal, like use the auto heal materia, or like Aerith set down like the things on the ground, but you can't tell her to set down her whatever her MP boosters, health booster, things like that. You literally have to start the battle, switch over to her, do the move, switch back. So you're constantly like kind of like babysitting them to get
yeah,
them to do what you
switching
want them
around
to
a lot.
do. So I
I
hate to me, I'm like the AI sucks, and it's mind boggling that they don't have just simple presets like go all out attack
yeah,
or be defensive, or don't use MP, or use MP sparingly, like any, like just even the simplest stuff they don't have. So they'll just burn through the crap they have. Like say like they if you like, hey, I'm giving you a good spell, but I don't want you to just, but it requires a lot of MP. There's nothing to tell you to tell the AI, don't just burn through the MP just because I gave you a really good spell. They'll do it. There's
Yeah, you got to
50,
switch
50
constantly.
MP. I don't care. I'm just gonna eat. I'm like,
The way I combated that was I just switched characters constantly. I
right.
would
So you
do
end
the
up
moves I wanted Cloud to move, and then I'd switch, and then I'd switch.
right. So you end up switching them, and I'm like, I don't like this because I feel like you're babysitting the characters way too
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, no, what it really made me wish was that I could just have a single person that I was playing as. That's one thing where it's like, is that the action's fault? Uh,
It's the combat design. I mean, there is kind of ways to do save material loadouts, kind of, but there needed to be a more robust system for
right.
swapping materia in and out than there was as well. That's another thing. So like I have nitpicks with the game. Um,
Yeah, and
I think there are things I
my
could make better.
nitpicks though, like whenever I start doing this, like I'll talk to our buddy Dan or somebody, and like I'm talking about nitpicks, people will be like, oh, that's so small though. And I was like, yeah, that's why they're called nitpicks.
Yeah,
I'm not saying the game is ruined or
yeah,
anything. I'm
yeah.
just
The
saying these
game,
are flaws you
these are minor things, but at the end of the day, and here's the thing, because like, correct me if I'm wrong. Like, let me see if I can remember offhand. Like, Black Myth, Wukong, Astrobot, Rebirth, Elden Ring, um,
metaphor,
Metaphor,
Balatro.
and Balatro. Okay,
Yeah,
so of those games, I have not beaten Black Myth, and I have not beaten Metaphor.
metaphor. Right.
I've played like 8 hours of Metaphor, or 5 hours, something five
Supposed
to
to
eight
be really
hours.
good.
Sure.
Well, this is
I definitely like it a lot more than Persona, personally speaking, and I will get to it. It's just I wasn't sure about $70 into it, but hey, I covered it for SGF, but thanks Sega for following up with me after the event. Um,
ooh,
but but yeah, like I would. I mean, hey, I probably would have played through it by now. But anyways, I've actually beaten all those other games listed, even Balatro for what it has of an ending. Um, so I've played and beat, like, I beat Astrobot, I beat Rebirth, I beat Earth Shadows of the Erd Tree, I beat Balatro, um, and okay, take away whether how I feel about DLC or not. I would never put Shadows of the Erd Tree on here. I do not. I genuinely dislike Shadows of the Erd Tree. I genuinely enjoyed Elden Ring. I definitely had my nitpicks, but I generally enjoyed the game. I did not enjoy Shadows of the Erd Tree. I did not enjoy the design ideals. I did not enjoy the design that went into that game, specifically for the skadoosh seeds or whatever. And I think it's Scardu, but like I think it was very telling how they tipped the balance of them within a week of that DLC being out. And then again, like it was like they were immediately balance patching that game within a week or less. And even majorly, because okay, so the point of this DLC, Shadows of the Earth Tree, is you go into the whatever the Skadoosh land, the DLC land area, right?
hmm
And what they do is they they percentagely just nerf all your stats. And to get your stats back, you have to find these skadoosh seeds or whatever. Um,
I
and
hate, I hate,
what it
yeah, I hate
basically is
conflict
is
this
that
game.
like, yeah, basically what it is that like there's every percentage of skadoosh seeds you get back, you'd get back that percentage of statistics, attack and defense or whatever the fuck, right? So there's 50 skadoosh seeds. So to get 100% of your level back, you had to find all 50 of these seeds, and immediately within the game, because they used to be, it used to be like percentagely, like evenly divided out.
hmm
And within a week, they had to change that, where the first skadoosh seeds would give you more percentage back than the later half. The later half, it would stagger, like, or it would start to like scale down. So like
Right.
you would get less the more, like the higher you went. So getting like that last percentage, they had to do that immediately. And here's the thing: from a design perspective, find that stupid. And everyone's like, well, this is what happens though, because it took 2.5 years to come out. People were level 300, people were level 700. They were going to go in and roll that DLC. And I'm like, that's their decision. That is their decision. Again, everything about Shadows of the Erdtree comes off like Miyazaki is an annoyed DM in a D&D game.
Yeah.
And he's just throwing in all these extra addendums to his monster manual, like DM playbook, to basically like, no, I'm going to force you to suffer. Like you cannot just steamroll this dungeon. So like everything about it, like the way the bosses were, like the bosses themselves seem to just be complete reactions to the way people were running through and steamrolling the first Elden Ring. So he builds all these bosses that have move sets and animations and whatever that are sort of counter to the what would have worked normally. So what did people do? They found new answers, which is just the play of the game. And that's what I did. I ended up like looking up this build because I was struggling on the very last boss, and then there's like, hey, check out this weird goofy magic build, and I still kind of struggled until I said, you know what, I was just frustrated, and I'm just going to press the attack button and not stop pressing attack, and I actually beat the final boss just by nonstop doing attack with this really weird mana user build, and I think it got nerfed right after I beat it. But
Yeah,
it's
see,
fine.
this two of my main annoyances. One, I hate when games are all like, "Look at how beefy and strong you are," and you lose everything. You got to build back up to that. I've always hated when they do that. Doesn't matter what game does it. DLC, full game, never liked it. I also I don't like games that constantly rebalance. Like it's one of my
Yeah,
least favorite parts about modern gaming is that things are constantly getting balanced and tweaked. I know some people love that. They're all like, "Oh, it means that they can fix problems." I was
yeah.
like, "No. The game is the game. The game comes out, you learn how to play the game for what the game is." And I think other Dark Souls fans, you know, mostly would agree with me. It's one of the reasons why they're like, "Oh, they shouldn't make them easier, give an easy mode." Not just because as
Well,
fans
the
you're
thing
picking, but
is it's kind of funny because they'll rebalance the game to make it harder or make something. Oh well, someone found something. Well, some stat management where like if I equip this thing that has this multiplier with this percentage based thing with this weapon, oh that actually lets me beat these bosses real easily. And then they're like, oh wait, no, that's too good. I'm like,
yeah,
okay, so you will change your game if someone is doing too well, but you do not want to acquiesce to like make it easier for someone. Like, I'm
no, it's
sorry,
just
but it's a double standard.
I have just always hated the idea of like balancing a game post. No, the game is the game. Learn to play the game. Like that's I
Well,
don't.
that's the thing. It's like people do learn to play it and they get mad.
Yeah,
It's like you didn't struggle enough. Oh, I'm sorry. Like,
someone's that we have friends that have uh they can find my brother's this way. He could just find the min max. He min maxes everything he ever does constantly. He can be so annoying to play like D&D with
hmm,
or to play a lot of like online MMOs or whatever. Like because he finds so fast how to min max a character to get the absolute best results.
hmm,
Within a day, he'll be sitting there doing that. And it makes it annoying to play those games with him because then everything just becomes him dominating
yeah.
because of stats. I understand that that's annoying. They're always going to exist. You know, God bless whatever they have that tweaks their brains to make them do that.
Well, it's like the developers are straight up just punishing people for playing their game.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is like,
Like, oh, you played the game too well. You delved too deep into the game's mechanics. No, well, I'm going to punish you now. I'm punishing you for playing my game too well.
yeah, it's like a
Get
10-year-old who gets outsmarted and
get out of here. Like,
keeps
I don't know.
changing the rules. Yeah, no, I don't like it. I agree. I don't like it. Now, granted, I'm sure there's plenty of Soulsy fans that are all like, "No, I like that they balance it to keep it hard."
Well, here's the thing, though. It's like the game. Okay, the game's designed to be hard. Someone finds a really weird exploit, and again, doing those builds requires a lot of time and you have a lot of weird stuff, and it's not
Mhm.
nobody's going to normally stumble into that.
And because of the internet, everybody can find it so fast. So
Right. So it's like, okay, so someone found a really wacky build that works really well. Why do you need to patch that out? If people want to play this thing, well, I want to play with my sword and shield and it's really hard. Well, go at it. You go have fun, soldier. Like, I don't know. Like, to me, we can ignore that. Even if we ignore the DLC part of it, I don't think Shadows from Mercury. Personally, I'm like, I don't think this game should be anywhere near Game of the Year. Personally, I don't like. Does it look good? Does it have great art? Yes, it does. Does it have some cool bosses? Yes, it does. It has some cool shit, but like, I from a design standpoint, I do not like anything about the way this DLC was designed.
yeah, I can't comment too much on it because I didn't play it. I got burnt out of Souls games playing through 3. Uh, I was getting so annoyed playing that on stream that I didn't play it for like 6 months, and then I played it not on stream
Hmm.
and enjoyed it and played through it and stuff. The problem with Souls games, if you're going to stream them, is everybody's got strong opinions on Souls games. So you end up, even the people that you like backseat you by accident.
Yeah,
And so you're already angry
yeah, yeah, yeah.
streaming a game like that. Um, and it happens with people just watching you play that game. Souls is like the ultimate backseating game,
Hmm.
period. But it's also like it is a game meant to be frustrating in a lot of ways. Like it seems like much of that game is designed to frustrate you, and I'm good. I'm done. I'm done being that angry about a game.
If anything, I think for me, more of this disappointment, whatever, comes from the fact that, frankly, Liza P was so good a year before,
Yeah.
that I'm very much in the like, personally speaking, the combat in Liza P is better than any Souls game has ever been. Um,
Uh,
just straight up is.
Bold
And
as hell, man.
Liza P is also a game where, yes, stat builds absolutely can play an important role, but if your skill is high enough, if you're just good enough at timing, you can destroy that game. Like
Right.
you're like, okay, like no, like you can be skilled enough. I mean, people do naked runs through Elden Ring and Dark Souls. I know that's absolutely a thing. I know they get the buckler shield or whatever, but like you don't even need the buckler shield on Liza P. Liza P is just okay. If you're really good at pairing, you will do well in this game, no
Hmm.
matter what. No matter what, like you will always do well in this.
Which is why you love it, because you love parrying. It's
Yes.
your favorite mechanic.
Every real-time game should have a parry.
You already did a thing going through all these different you did a video going through all these different categories. So I want to nitpick a couple of categories. Not nitpick. I want to pick out a couple of categories that I think would be fun to talk about. Um since we might do a TGA results episode, who won, how was the show, but I want to talk a little bit about best adaptation, because I think
Mhm.
it's part of me is like, this is one of the most interesting things to come out of video games,
Yeah.
is that more and more video game adaptations will be happening to TV. It seems
Mhm.
like TV slash anime, they really love adapting video games. Best adaptation is sort of weird this year because, one, you actually do have a few really good adaptations. You
Yeah.
have a couple of weak adaptations, in my opinion, and you have one that I had no idea really. I don't know how to really judge it. But you have 4 TV shows and a movie, right? Knuckles is a movie. Yeah, Knuckles is a movie.
No, Knuckles is a TV show.
Knuckles is a TV show. Oh, that's not like Sonic 2. They didn't call Sonic 2 Knuckles. I I didn't watch. I wasn't gonna judge. Um, I know you keep telling me I should watch it because Jim Carrey is great in those movies, but
Miniseries. Yeah, Knuckles is a miniseries. There's no Jim Carrey in Knuckles though.
um, yeah, I'm just saying I haven't seen the Sonic movies.
Mm.
Even though I have been told by several people they are good, I just haven't seen them. You know what it is? I don't really. I get a little bit annoyed with the fake CGI characters interacting with people as a shtick thing, and I think I've put that annoyance on Sonic without having seen it. It's not fair. One of the even one of the best movies ever done, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, I still sort of get annoyed. And yeah, no doubt that it's great. I'm not trying to argue that it's not great, but this annoyance of real people interacting with fake people, it applied to Space Jam and
Yeah,
Who
but
Framed Roger Rabbit.
Space Jam sucks.
Well, yeah, because Michael Jordan can't act for shit. Like, amazing athlete, love the man. Terrible actor.
That movie is not good. If you are able to physically separate your memory from the action and look at it as an objectively, how is this film? It's not good. Roger Rabbit's a great film. Uh,
Fair, yeah, and Bill Murray's great in Space Jam.
Bill
Um,
Murray does as much as he can. Bill Murray and honestly Wayne Knight got some of the best laughs out of me.
Herculean
Space Jam.
tasks.
Like,
But my point is I just sort of I get annoyed by those things, even when they're great. So I've put that annoyance on Sonic, and I haven't watched it yet, and I should watch it. Um, but this is all shows. But MGM Studios is on two of them. So for this is Amazon, Fallout and Like a Dragon. Now I didn't really get into the Like a Dragon Yakuza series. I
yeah. Well, I
watched
mean,
the
I
first
saw
episode.
I saw the trailer and it's not really following the storyline at all. I mean, it has the characters, but it's not really the plot.
Oh, I thought it was the plot of Yakuza 1, but I didn't play Yakuza.
Not really. It's kind of like saying how like, oh, Ninja Turtles in '89 or Batman '89 followed the plot of a specific comic, but not really. It's like, oh, The Dark Knight is kind of it follows the plot of the Long Halloween. No, but a little bit. Like it takes bits from it, kind of thing.
Is Majima in the show?
Yeah, he's in the show. I think so. Yeah.
But is he crazy and wild and cool?
Probably to some extent. I don't know.
Okay, well, maybe I'll give it a shot again. But I tried, and I wasn't
I
down.
mean, the people who were like writing the show were like, no, we didn't play any of the games. I'm like, okay, fine.
But why? But
It's,
why?
it's very much the Lance Hendrick Resident Evil situation.
So Arcane's probably going to win.
I don't think so. I think Fallout's going to win.
Well, I would argue that Fallout is one of the best video game adaptations that's ever been done.
I think Fallout
Arcane-
will win because Arcane's already had its moment at the
Yeah,
TGs.
that's fair. But Arcane it's got the nerds all hot and bothered in a way that Fallout did not. Fallout did really well with general audiences.
I think this is really going to boil down to the international judges, like the judges outside of America and UK. Really,
Okay.
how are they going to feel about Fallout? Because I think the American and in a chunk of Europe, not all of Europe, a chunk of Europe is going to really like Fallout,
It's real good.
and I think a lot of the rest of the world might just be like, nah, Arcane.
I
Obviously
mean,
France because it was animated there, but like, I think it might appeal to more. Arcane may have more worldwide appeal than Fallout.
the thing that I want to get into about Arcane is that season 1 of Arcane was, from a storytelling perspective, extraordinarily solid.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it was tight. There was like little to no fat on that script. Like, they just did really well. This season has been nowhere near as smooth. It's nowhere near as it's still well written in terms of character moments, but like it's just not it's not bad. I'm not trying to say it's bad, but like it's a little bit sloppier in terms of writing, in my opinion. Like the characters aren't quite as well written as they were.
Mhm.
Maybe it's because the villain isn't as engaging as Silco was. Um, I don't know. There's really cool moments, and this season's not even done yet. That's another thing that I don't know how they're going to judge it compared to Fallout, which is done. Tomb Raider. I'm not exactly sure why the Tomb Raider show is on here. It wasn't bad, but also it wasn't.
Might just be filling a slot, honestly.
Yeah, like they just didn't have enough. Yeah, that's fair. Um, but anyway, I think Arcane's gonna win it. I think Fallout probably deserves to win it.
I honestly
Fallout
want my guess. My gut is Fallout.
Yeah,
It
I
is.
hope so. I hope you're right.
My guts Fallout just because this isn't the first time Arcane's been here.
And you think that'll change? That'll be enough. That'll be enough to change
Yeah.
judges. Okay. All right.
I
I,
mean, just going by, I'm just thinking like, the way Judgment be like, well, okay, we already know Arcane's great. We've already given this Arcane's already won this. I'm pretty sure it's already won it. It's Fallout was phenomenal, or Fallout was so great, even though we weren't really sure if it was going to be. So I don't know, because the thing is, like, I'm always, and the thing is, I always downplay Fallout's, um, not fan base, but just like I guess fan size, if anything, because they're able to pull 76 back from the brink and make it into an enjoyable game, apparently.
mhm.
So we live in a world where people love Fallout 4 and 3 and 76, and people actively play Fallout 76.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, well, Fallout actually has a much bigger fan base than I usually give credit for. So
Well, and the older Fallout fan base is pretty extensive. Like in Fallout, the original like PC games of Fallout were original nerddom.
yeah,
Like, and so all those people are in their like 40s, some of them are in their 50s. Like
yep,
that's a pretty deep concentration of fan base. Like, like if a fan base is normally like wide or tall, like this
yeah,
is a pyramid. Like there's a pretty solid amount of depth to their fan base.
yeah.
Um the other let me see, there's only like one or two others that I want to talk about. Best narrative, hard to talk about because Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth is probably just going to win, even though I think
I
Hellblade's
kind
gonna
of
be better.
wonder. Silent Hill 2 might win.
You think Silent Hill 2 is going
It
to win on
might. It might, but I think it's weird because it's a remake.
that? Right.
And it's not a remake in the same way Rebirth is, like changing the story, doing stuff with the story. It's the same story. So you're basically saying like this classically well-revered narrative game, or like Silent Hill 2 has a well-regarded narrative, and it's not
Mhm.
different in remake. It's the same thing in remake.
Right.
It's basically you're stacking up these older modern games to classic Silent Hill 2. Like, are they as good or better than Silent Hill 2's story? And that's where I think Silent Hill 2 might have this edge, just because people are like, well, it's still one of the greatest stories ever told in a video game, or the just the subject matter it tackles is unheard of for most video games. I think it might win just for that, just for being like, oh, it tackles really dark, unheard of subject matter. Um,
Okay.
it's still one of the only games to really go to those places, kind of thing.
The thing is, I wouldn't be unhappy about Silent Hill 2.
I don't know if I would. Yeah, I don't know if I would be unhappy or anything, but yeah, it would. It does kind of in a way bring back that whole argument. Should remakes count? Should DLC count? Kind of thing,
I would sort of love to see Hellblade 2 win it, but I don't think it will. For like audio design, Hellblade 2 is
I
gonna
think audio design. It's Hellblades to lose.
uh part of me is like they're gonna give it to like friggin' Astrobot or something like that. Like they're just gonna vote. But Hellblade 2 actually legitimately has I mean Hellblade in general, that
What
studio does amazing audio design.
what's on score? What's on score or soundtrack?
Best score in music, it's Astrobot, Final Fantasy 7, Metaphor, Silent Hill 2, and Stellar Blade. It's not particularly interesting in my opinion. It's not
No,
an
it's not.
interesting
It's
yeah.
Rebirth. It's just going to go to Rebirth. The argument is basically, from what I've heard, is that Rebirth is great, but it is remixed music. It's all just remixed music. Whereas, say, Metaphor should win because it's all original. Good point. I think that's a very fair argument. Um, so
I like the music in Rebirth a lot. Like I said earlier, it is like it's part of the reason I liked the world the first time playing through. But none of these I like the music in Astrobot. It's repetitive, some of it, but like
yeah, and music
I
in
like the music.
Astrobot is
No,
yeah.
but I like it, but none of it's complex. And granted, I'm not a composer. I couldn't begin to explain to you. I have a pretty good ear. I've
Yeah.
learned, but
I don't
like
know. Sometimes it's pretty good, and then sometimes, yeah, it's got the little catchy, Astrobot thing. But the problem is that so much of Astrobot's music kind of like falls back down on, what's your name? You got a name,
as
Astrobot. And it's like,
yeah.
okay, we get it. Like,
Oh,
um,
but that one tree level
but the tree level,
is
come on, get in
pretty
my mouth.
It's pretty good.
That is one moment, if you're trying to sell off of one singular moment, that tree level makes a good case. But
Yeah,
yeah, I don't know. I mean, Astrobot's good, but it's not like Mario Odyssey good, Mario Galaxy good soundtrack, or I'm just thinking like Banjo Kazooie. I'm just thinking of contemporaries, within that genre. And I'm like, is it as good as the best of the 3D No, it's
I
fine.
I also think it's weird. By the way, I forgot about this in narrative. Black Ops 6's narrative isn't in the running at all on this, and I sort of thought people were gonna.
I've gone through the campaign. It's interesting.
It's
You know what
interesting. It's fun.
you know what I gotta say about this is that anyone who, because people use the argument all the time how it's like they resell you the same game every year. They're selling you the same game. Madden and Call of Duty and FIFA, the same game every year, and we just buy it. I'm like, if you think Call of Duty is the same game every year, you have no idea what you're talking about. The campaign in Blop 6 is nothing like COD
Right.
4. Nothing. Like
Right.
the game design is nothing. Like you have a hub, you have stealth missions, you have like bases that you build up, you have dialogue branches. Like this COD is not the same game every year.
I will say an interesting thing about Black Ops 6 versus Modern Warfare, whatever that was the last one. Uh, they took so much more, like they had so much more fun in Blop 6 than the last, like, Infinity Ward
Hmm.
COD. Like, I, there's maybe one level in the last COD that really sticks out to me, the convoy level, and it broke on me anyway. So, that's the one where I got trapped and I had to restart the entire level. Um, but like Blop 6 has like real characters. Like there's character work being done. Like everybody gets obsessed with the cool characters in the mainline, I guess you want to call it, Modern Warfare. But like a lot of them are the same character wrapped up. They're all just hardcore. In Blop 6, the characters seem like they have personalities. They're still all hardcore people, but like they have personality. Blops just in general always seems to have more
Right.
personality.
Yeah.
Um, Granted, am I a sucker for 90s tactical gear and, stuff? Yes, I am. I think it is infinitely cooler. 90s was like peak American Empire tactical
Yeah.
stuff. Like you saw a 90s soldier and you were like, hell yeah. Like today, you're kind of like post GWAT, you're kind of like everybody wears multicam and knee pads. Like everybody wears the same shit. And like there's no like iconic, you know, there's no iconic American,
Yeah.
tactical stuff. 90s was like peak end of Cold War stuff. So yeah, I'm biased to it already, but I was sort of interested. I thought there'd be more love for it, and it seems like it was a flash in the pan, like in terms of like the campaign.
Hmm.
There was no staying power, it seemed like, where like
Well, to be fair, I'm trying to remember the last time COD campaign even had staying power. And the only thing I can think of is the meme from Advanced Warfare. And then before that, it was Modern Warfare trilogy and maybe the first Black Ops. Not even as fairly the second, even though the second was actually pretty cool. But yeah, it's like
but like
Ops
we're
One and the original Modern Warfare trilogy had more. It felt like they had more. I mean, you could say, well, that's because of no Russian. That's because of all these other dumb shit. Um, I don't know. It's COD has such a weird history when you actually truly look at it. Because like one of the most downvoted trailers of all time is COD Infinite Warfare
mm,
trailer, and it has like a record for most downvotes or something. And not even that long ago, I showed my chat without telling them what it was, like a trailer for this game. And everyone's like, "This looks incredible! Whoa, this is amazing! What is this? Is the cool? This is some cool looking." I'm like, it's Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. It's the one in space, like in the far future. And at the time, everyone hated it. But like
yeah,
you show people what that is. You show them like the campaign.
and the movement and
And yeah, you show them what the game is without telling them that it's COD, and people are like, that looks really cool. What is that? And it's like it's COD, but everyone shat on it. So we went right back to they went right back to what they're known for.
Yeah, didn't that one like star the guy that played Jon Snow or something like that too? I don't.
Oh, Infinite? I don't know actually. I don't even remember who made Infinite Warfare. I just know that like people hated it.
Huh.
And it's so weird. I'm like, I don't know. Like, I think it's more fun to have these crazy what if scenarios with spaceships and stuff rather than because I think period pieces are great. I'm more fond of that because I we've
What's
done
good
all we're
about
gonna do with modern warfare. Basically, is my I guess my point here. I'm like modern warfare is kind of played out. Even near future is kind of played out.
give me a Call of Duty in friggin' 1850. I want to be in the middle of a match. I blew my load and I'm just sitting there, just like really quick, getting my thing backed up. I want to use a black powder pistol where you got to put in the powder and then you crank in the ball and then you got to put the blast cap, all while getting shot at. Just slow it way down. You know? Like where you can't see anything if they're not wearing red coats. You know what I mean?
God, can you
Or
imagine? People would hate it so much.
yeah, people would be so mad. One of my That's one of my favorite things. Like when people are all like, "Yeah, I can't believe they're so dumb. They wore red coat uniforms." It's like, well, yeah, so that you could see them through all the smoke on the battlefield, so that they could tell their people to turn left or turn right or march. So that you could actually like see your own army because you couldn't see 20 yards. There was
Right?
so
Yeah.
much smoke in the air. That's why like the Union, for instance, wore bright blue, and the Confederates were like, we're so smart, we're going to wear gray because it blends in better. And then they constantly shot themselves. Stonewall Jackson probably regretted gray uniforms real quick.
Well, shooting themselves in the foot, that's kind of their motto. But,
It's what they do.
it is kind of interesting to think about, though, because, I mean, even in 1850, you say, well, what about a revolver or whatever? And it was funny. I was watching somewhere where Western experts were breaking down stuff. And they're like, the thing about revolvers is they're really inaccurate. Like,
At that time, so later in the 1800s, you had black powder revolvers, which, yeah, okay, it gave you 6 shots. It's really cool, but they weren't that much more accurate than muskets
yeah.
anyway.
Yeah, well, just like there's just these handguns where people have like shootouts or duels or whatever, and they're actually wildly inaccurate. Like
Yeah,
you get like they were saying like at the end of Good, Bad, and the Ugly, they're like the distance apart from each other, they'd probably have to shoot all 6 shots and one would hit.
10 paces. People forget, like, oh, you're going to do 10 paces for the duel. It's like, why would you only go 10? Do 10 paces. If you're listening to this right now, go outside and do 10 paces. Hell, do it in your hallway. It's long enough. Like 10 paces is not very far. You're just sort of hoping. They didn't put sights on muskets for the
Yeah,
longest time. The fact that in sorry, not World War, but in the Civil War, you had guys that were sharpshooters that would get up into trees to try and snipe officers. Like those guys were so accurate with muskets. Of course,
yeah,
then you had black powder rifles, and you had
yeah.
toward the
It's
end of
basically like rifles. Specific types of rifles were accurate, but they're like 6 shooters, not really.
yeah, you know, it, early in the like 1900s, they got pretty like the Colt Single Action Army was pretty accurate for the time. You got to remember the moving parts of a revolver. Like it's hard to get repeatability with moving parts. So the
Right.
higher quality the moving part, the less like basically the more handmade it was, the more specialized and fitted it was, the more expensive it was, but also the more likely it was to be accurate. But two guesses to who could afford those. Fucking nobody. Nobody could. Nobody was walking around like the Wild West has this image of everybody having a 6 shooter on their hip. Very few
And
gunfighters.
yeah, that's the other thing. Like, very few people actually carried them with them all the time. That's pretty much a myth. And then
Everyone
like
had a rifle.
yeah, and the other myth is like they would have them in holsters. Like holsters is kind of like a Hollywood thing. Well, if people had them, they usually had them in their coat. Like Doc Holliday, they at the shootout, the OK Corral, they had like most people would have a custom tailor put a pouch in their coat and they put in there. They wouldn't just walk around with it just hanging sashed lazily down their thigh. Like that wasn't very common,
Yeah,
and that
maybe
that didn't
lawmen,
happen.
but also think about the Ballad of Buster Scruggs is a very funny movie because it spends a lot of time telling you, like, if you're going to go around making a name for yourself, other people are going to want to make a name for themselves based on you,
Yeah,
right? That's the whole point of the movie. So do you want to walk around with a big advertisement that's all like, I'm a gunslinger?
yeah.
That's how you get shot in the back a lot. But this, oh, sorry, this is a total aside. I went down
All
a
the things
line
to
about
consider for Red Dead 3. But yeah, people like yeah, you pretty much you had to be like lawman or something if you were going to be walking around with a revolver on you at all
right,
times. Like it
and
just didn't happen.
you were much more likely to be carrying a much more accurate, much more affordable, and much more useful rifle.
Rifle
Um, I
on the
wanna
back of a horse, or something.
I wanna end I wanna end the episode on best debut indie game because you've been playing a lot of indie games and Nadia has
Hmm.
been playing a lot of indie games. And other than Balatro, I don't recognize any of these.
Well, which ones were they?
So the best debut indie game is Animal Well, Balatro, Manor Lords, Pacific Drive, and The Plucky Squire. Now I've heard of The Plucky Squire, but
I beat it.
I don't actually know what The Plucky Squire.
Plucky Squire is a game. It's a really meta game. It's a game where you play as a an illustration in a children's book. The Plucky Squire, the titular character, and the bad guy learns basically the truth of the universe that hey, we're characters in a book, and the whole point is that he wants to change the ending of the book so that he doesn't lose. This is mostly because he's greedy, but that the ramifications, it has a sort of Toy Story thing where like if the child reading the book gets uninspired by he'll lose interest if he doesn't he needs to be inspired by this book. This book will inspire him to want to become an artist himself. So
Okay.
the whole thing is like he grows up to become a comic book artist or something like that, and this is his childhood inspiration. But his childhood inspiration, like something happens that causes like the villain of the book to become self-aware of what they are, so he wants to try to win the day. But if he wins, if he takes over, and then that's gonna make the child go, oh, this book sucks, then he shelves it, and then he never gets inspired again, kind of thing. And it's like Toy Story, where like the books, if they don't get read or anything, like they don't get loved, like they slowly fade into obscurity or something like that.
That's
But
pretty
anyway,
tough.
but there's this whole thing where like the character, you're a 2D drawing, but when you come out of the book, you turn into a 3D character. Like you go into the real world, you run across the desk, stuff like that. Um,
Oh, that's that. How did that not get on? Like, there's no. I haven't seen really anything for it. I recognize the name, but I don't remember where we saw it.
We've
That's
seen it in
cute as
many
hell.
game shows because yeah, because like you're running on this book, from page to page, but then you have to leave the book and you come out and you're a 3D character running across a desk or whatever, and then you have to like jump into other illustrations and stuff where it's like, there's like a part where you need to get somewhere to get something, so you have to go and you jump into a mug, like a coffee mug that has spaceship people on it, so you can borrow their laser and jetpack, so you can fly up somewhere else, to
That's
get
so
something you
damn
need,
cute.
like stuff
That's
like that.
that's genuinely like so cute.
So the things people hate about the game is that the game basically tells you how to do everything. Um,
Okay.
like it's Atreus levels of spoiler heavy.
Hmm.
And then the other thing is that the game runs like fucking trash on the Switch. So
Which would be the best place to
I
have a
beat it.
market.
I beat it, but good guy. I downloaded it on the Switch thinking, no, I mean, it'll be fine. No, it's not fine. It runs like garbage on the Switch. Runs like absolute garbage.
So Balatro's going to win that category.
Oh, Bellagio is going to win it because it's also its best debut, its best indie, and its game of the year. So it kind of like it's almost mean because considering that it's got all those awards, and then the more interesting for me is not even best debut indie, but best indie game, which is a different list. And UFO 50, I think, should win that. I think UFO 50 is one of the most impressive feats of video game design I've ever seen in my life. Um,
Huh.
Because that's so what it is UFO 50 is like UFO Games. It's a made up game company, and like a couple of dudes for the past 4 to 6 years or something, made 50 wholly original video games where it's like from 1980, like 81 or 82 to 1989, they made a fictional history of different genre video games out of one game company, like pretending like they were Data East or Hudson Soft or something, and they made 50 whole games. Whole games. Some of them are sequels, but like a whole different games. Like this is the company's history before it went bankrupt, and these were the 50 games that this company made, and they made 50 full ass games. Now, granted, they're NES length games, but
Right.
it's 50 of them. So there are 50 brand new, wholly original NES games that covers almost a decade's, and they're designed very like the first game plays like a Commodore 64 or an Atari game, right? The last game plays like a really high end NES game, like really pushing the boundaries of the NES kind of thing. So
Oh,
every
yeah.
game, has this fictional, it came out in 1983, 84, 85, 86, 87. How the games get more complex, graphics get a little better, things get a little more in depth, like, as the years go on, how each game kind of like adds more to it and stuff. And it's incredible. It's phenomenally um phenomenally designed game. Like UFO 50 is probably one of the most mind-blowing achievements I've seen out of a couple of people, couple of indie devs.
No shit.
So
That's another one that I just like hadn't heard anything of.
the one sort of frustrating thing is that like it's a collection of games and you don't have instruction manuals. So you're getting the experience of being a kid in the 80s and renting an NES game from a mom and pop shop with no instructions and no idea how to play the game or what you're supposed to do.
That was my entire experience because somehow, even though we were meticulous about taking care of our stuff, like our games and stuff, my brother especially, we have none of the original boxes, none of the like. So every game that I played as a kid on NES, I figured it out as I went.
Yeah, and that's what you have to do. Like it's intentionally vague on how does this work? It's like you've got to figure it out.
Hmm. That does sound like an interesting. I didn't even realize there was a second indie category here, but yeah, I found it. Balatro's on it. Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. Animal Well. What the hell is Animal Well?
Animal Well is the game that Dunkey published, didn't make, but he published, and it's a platformer style.
Hmm.
There's a twist to it as well. It's supposed to be very good. I didn't play it.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is like a great indie year.
Yeah,
Like you were saying to me outside of recording, like maybe a couple of weeks ago, that like this is one of the most interesting years for indies that you've seen.
yeah,
Partially because Nadia's doing, like does she have a YouTube channel now? She's doing
yeah.
like indie specific.
Hmm.
You should shout out that YouTube channel. What are you
Yeah,
doing?
Tattooed Nadia's. Yeah, if you want to check out indie stuff, she's got a great collection of stuff there.
Because she's doing like I was seeing on Twitter before I deleted it that she talks about indie stuff all the time. So Tattooed Nadia, find her, find the indie stuff. I want to say she's played.
Introduced me to some insanely good indie stuff, like a thousand times resist this year, which is more visual novel game, but that is one of the most insane plots of it, and that's like again like a one dude or like it's mostly one dude. I think it's like a small team, but it's all written from, man, I can't even begin to try to describe that plot for you because it starts with um it jumps all over. It goes through a long period of history, like a long span of time the game takes place, but it's from someone who's you play as, well, the main plot is basically like there's Hong Kong immigrants who escaped during the Hong Kong protests to America, and then they have a rebellious daughter, and then there's a weird alien arrival, and then a disease spreads from that, and then for some reason this daughter has immunity to it. So then she runs away, but then hooks up with the government and agrees to be part of their test subjects, to test her blood, test her body for antibodies. And then that goes south. And then they try to make clones of her. And then it just goes on and on and on and on. And then eventually it's like the only ones left are her are in these 5 clones living in a bunker, and then that breeds this whole thing, and then the clones make more clones, and then there's this, thousands of years later, there's like this weird society of like hierarchy, societal hierarchy of all these different various clones of her and all these other different things, and then like it goes back to the aliens. The aliens you think are just trying to wipe people out, but it's actually not. They're actually just trying to communicate, but like their method of communication is very bizarre and weird, and it accidentally like kills people. So, and
There's a
then like
lot
you
like
make contact, and then the aliens. So there was dissent among the aliens about what happened and stuff like that. So it is all over the place.
but what's funny is this on a complexity level reminds me of Cloud Atlas
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, yeah.
and
Yeah,
how you should go watch Cloud Atlas.
exactly. It's way more like
It sounds
dreamy
like it's
sci-fi,
yeah.
but
Yeah, it sounds like it's quite a bit more extensive than Cloud
it's a little
Atlas.
bit. It's a little bit like more a little bit more like Arrival mixed with like War of the Worlds mixed with
Well, that's
you
one of
know
the interesting plot points
Persona.
in Cloud Atlas is that like one of the like the goddess in the far flung future is that clone lady, right? Like that
Yeah,
lady
Sun
that's
Me.
Sunmi, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
who was a clone, who lived in an underground, who served in an underground like Hooters basically.
yeah, basically like
And
a burger shop.
yeah, underground Hooters in Seoul in South Korea, which really isn't that far off, honestly. not to get too not to get too political here, but anyways, like one of the clones is digging through the lost and found and finds a video of a man of of a video of an actor in a movie who rebels against being stuck in a retirement home, which is actually based on a real event that happens later on in the past. But anyway, she helps lead a rebellion, and she gets found picked up by a rebel cell group who breaks her out, and then like she goes on to inspire all these people, and then after the world basically goes post-apocalyptic, everyone remembered Sonmi for her for her kind words, her speeches that she gave.
Yeah, her message that because her rebellion fails, and at the end she's sending out a message, and like part of her message becomes scripture.
Yeah.
Like it's watch Cloud Atlas. Go see that. That's how I'm going to end every episode for the next year. Just watch Cloud Atlas. On that note, we have patrons to thank. Once again, if you're interested in becoming a patron at any level, please check out patreon.com/YoVideogames podcast. Due to the week was God Knight. Thank you, God Knight. And our producers for this episode are Dragonwolf Makoto, Osnight, Zyberknight, Tsunami, Kroy35, Hyperviper89, LCL Mayhem, and Ziggy Z. Thank you, dudes. We'll catch you next time.
Later, dudes.